Donald Trump drops terrible truth about Black Jesus. In an age dominated by political theater and intense cultural debates, few figures command attention quite like Donald J. Trump. Known for his unfiltered rhetoric and polarizing presence, Trump recently made a statement that has left the nation reeling. In the midst of a packed crowd filled with both supporters and detractors, he delivered an unexpected and incendiary remark about Black Jesus, sparking a firestorm of controversy across social, political, and religious landscapes. This wasn't just another headline-grabbing moment. It was a seismic event in a country already grappling with divisions over race, religion, and identity. What exactly did Trump say that caused such an uproar? Why has it shaken people to their core? And what does this mean for the ongoing discourse on faith and culture in America? Let's dive into the details. But before I continue to read this dream of revelation, I will ask you if you have any testimony that you would want to share with us and with our viewers. You can do so by sending us your testimony through this email address, eternalbiblestories@gmail.com. You can find this down the screen of this video. Share your dreams, visions, and near-death experience with us to change someone's life for better. Please write them well so they can be readable to our audience. Thank you. At a rally held deep in the heart of the Bible Belt, the atmosphere was thick with a fervor that transcended the typical political gathering. Thousands of supporters, their faces lit with anticipation, waved signs, and donned red hats emblazoned with the iconic "Make America Great Again" slogan. The crowd seemed more like a congregation at a spiritual revival than a political assembly, with an energy that pulsed with both political zeal and an almost mystical intensity. For many in attendance, these rallies had grown to symbolize more than just political events. They had become quasi-religious ceremonies where personal values, cultural fears, and hopes for the future collided in a show of unity and passion. Donald Trump, ever the larger-than-life figure, ascended the stage with his trademark swagger. As he walked to the podium, the crowd erupted into a cacophony of cheers and rhythmic chants of "USA! USA!" His pace across the stage, bathed in a spotlight that reflected off his signature red tie and dark suit, gave the moment a ceremonial, almost ritualistic air. He began his speech with the familiar repertoire of grievances, boasts, and sharp critiques aimed at his political adversaries. His words were typically fiery, aimed at riling up the crowd and rallying his base with a blend of populist rhetoric. But then, sensing an opportune moment to take things further, Trump paused dramatically, his expression shifting into one of pensive contemplation. The crowd fell into a hushed silence as Trump extended his hand, a gesture that seemed both commanding and conspiratorial. "You know," he began, his voice taking on the cadence of a preacher addressing his congregation. "Some people are saying, and these are smart people, very smart people, that Jesus wasn't white." The words hit with the force of a thunderclap, immediately drawing gasps from the audience. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath as the weight of his statement hung in the air, suspended for a moment in disbelief. "They're saying he was black." "Okay now, I don't know. I'm just saying what I hear. But isn't that interesting? Isn't that something we should talk about?" The silence that followed was palpable, thick with tension. But then, like ripples across a still pond, reactions began to spread. Some attendees gasped audibly, their astonishment clear in their wide eyes. Others, more fervently loyal, erupted in applause, their cheers loud and emphatic. Still, Others exchanged confused glances, their expressions a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and uncertainty. Trump, ever the maestro of crowd dynamics, leaned into the moment, seemingly reveling in the varying reactions he had stirred. His ability to read and manipulate the room was unmatched, and here he capitalized on the emotional currents he had set in motion. "Think about it, folks," he continued, his voice rising to a crescendo. "They don't want you to know the truth. They want to erase our history. But maybe, just maybe, there's more to the story than they're telling us." The crowd's reaction began to split even further. Some supporters stood up, clapping fervently, nodding in agreement with every word he said. For them, this was the embodiment of Trump's appeal: unfiltered, audacious, and willing to take on the toughest, most controversial topics. His words were not just about challenging history, but about dismantling what they saw as an oppressive cultural narrative that sought to erase certain truths. On the other side, the critics began to form in opposition. They viewed his statement as more than just a rhetorical distraction. It was a calculated move designed to exploit racial tensions for political gain. This was a deliberate provocation, a way of stoking division and keeping his base engaged by appealing to their anxieties over race and identity. The surreal intensity of the moment was hard to ignore. In one corner of the room, fervent applause continued, while in another, individuals stood frozen in shock, clearly processing the implications of what they had just heard. Trump, unfazed by the polarized responses, continued to stoke the fires of controversy. "I'm not saying it's true," he added, raising his hands in mock innocence. "I'm just saying we should think about it. That's all. Just think about it." This line, this perfect rhetorical flourish, was a masterstroke, a statement that was both provocative and non-committal, open to interpretation by his supporters and critics alike. To some, it was a genuine invitation to engage in a deeper conversation about race, history, and faith. To others, it was a cynical ploy, designed to further entrench divisions and create new fault lines within the country. The ambiguity of Trump's remark allowed it to resonate on multiple levels. For his supporters, it was a bold challenge to the perceived cultural elites and their attempts to rewrite history. For his detractors, it was a troubling and divisive comment that revealed the extent to which Trump was willing to go in order to maintain his relevance and influence in an increasingly polarized America. Regardless of how one interpreted the statement, one thing was clear: the evening had been irrevocably altered. The moment had left an indelible mark on the audience, and it would not soon be forgotten. As the rally came to an end, the media frenzy began almost immediately. Clips of Trump's speech flooded social media platforms, igniting a torrent of commentary. Hashtags like blackjesus began trending, with users debating everything from the historical accuracy of Jesus's ethnicity to the broader political and cultural implications of Trump's statement. Religious leaders from all sides of the spectrum weighed in. In the Bible Belt, where Trump was often seen as a champion of conservative Christian values, reactions were split. Some pastors dismissed the comment as a mere distraction, while others saw it as a moment to engage in deeper theological discussions about the diversity of early Christianity. Progressive clergy, meanwhile, saw it as an opportunity to highlight the racial and cultural diversity within the faith, framing Trump's words as a catalyst for conversations about inclusion and representation. Academics and historians also weighed in on the debate, noting that the question of Jesus' ethnicity has been a subject of scholarly discussion for centuries. While Western depictions of Jesus have traditionally portrayed him as a white man, historical evidence suggests that Jesus was likely a Middle Eastern man living in the 1st century. For scholars, Trump's comment was less about historical accuracy and more about exploiting contemporary anxieties surrounding race and identity in America. For Trump's supporters, the controversy only served to solidify his image as a fearless truth-teller, unafraid of political correctness and willing to challenge the narratives imposed by the mainstream media and cultural elites. For his critics, it was a dangerous attempt to weaponize religion and race for political gain, deepening the already existing rifts in an increasingly polarized nation. In the days that followed, the debate over Jesus' ethnicity became a microcosm of the larger cultural and political conflicts, tearing at the fabric of American society. Trump, ever at the center of the storm, remained unapologetic, seemingly reveling in the attention and controversy he had sparked. For those who attended the rally, the moment was unforgettable. Whether seen as an act of courage, a cynical ploy, or a troubling statement, it epitomized Trump's ability to capture the nation's attention, shape the discourse, and keep the conversation alive in the ever-evolving narrative of faith, race, and identity in America. The reactions to Donald Trump's provocative comments about the possibility of Jesus being black were as varied as the audiences he seemed intent on engaging. Social media platforms exploded almost immediately, transforming his words into a cultural phenomenon. Within moments, hashtags such as blackjesus, Trump on religion, and historical Jesus began trending across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The digital realm became a battleground where supporters, critics, and casual observers clashed in passionate debates, filled with humor, satire, and sharp commentary about the implications of Trump's statement. For Trump supporters, the remark was celebrated as another example of his fearless approach to confronting uncomfortable truths. "Trump's the only one who's got the guts to say it," exclaimed one Twitter user, a sentiment that garnered thousands of likes and retweets. MAGA-aligned accounts framed the comment as a direct challenge to mainstream historical narratives, accusing them of erasing or distorting the truth. Conservative influencers quickly released videos praising Trump for shedding light on the real Jesus and opposing what they termed woke revisionism in history. To these individuals, Trump's statement wasn't just a controversial comment. It was a courageous stand against a perceived cultural erasure, a rallying cry to reclaim truth from the clutches of political correctness. In stark contrast, critics were equally vocal in their condemnation. Many accused Trump of exploiting religion and racial identity to further inflame divisions in the country. "This is another dog whistle from a man who thrives on division," read a widely shared tweet. Prominent figures in politics and media joined in the chorus of outrage, some calling the comment a cynical distraction from more pressing issues, while others expressed horror at what they saw as Trump's willingness to politicize deeply personal and spiritual topics for his own gain. The response on the internet reflected the polarized nature of the debate, with a flurry of memes and satire mocking the situation. Images of a black Jesus wearing a MAGA hat flooded social media, accompanied by captions like, "The Second Coming, now with tax cuts." In another viral meme, Trump was depicted standing at heaven's gates, questioning a melanated Jesus, asking, "Are you sure you're the one they wrote about?" These parodies, while injecting humor, also highlighted the absurdity of the controversy, underscoring how quickly a seemingly innocent statement could be transformed into a flashpoint of cultural and political tension. Religious communities, too, were divided in their responses. Among white evangelical leaders, many of whom viewed Trump as a staunch defender of their values, the comment presented a delicate dilemma. On one hand, they were hesitant to criticize a man who wielded considerable influence over their congregations. On the other, the idea of a black Jesus challenged long-standing cultural and racial assumptions embedded in predominantly white evangelical spaces. Some leaders tried to downplay Trump's remark, dismissing it as mere speculation or a distraction from more important theological discussions. Pastor Greg Thompson of a Texas megachurch addressed his congregation with cautious diplomacy, saying, "Let us remember that the color of Jesus' skin is less important than his message of salvation and love. Speculating about his ethnicity only distracts us from the gospel." While his remarks were met with polite applause, murmurs of unease could still be heard, particularly from parishioners who felt the issue had been sidestepped. In contrast, black churches approached Trump's statement with a mixture of skepticism and reflection. For many in these communities, the image of a black Jesus has long been a symbol of empowerment and resilience, especially in the face of oppression. While some found Trump's comment surprising, they saw it as a rare acknowledgement of a perspective that had often been overlooked in mainstream discussions of Jesus' identity. However, skepticism abounded regarding Trump's true motives, given his history of racially charged rhetoric and policies that many believe have disproportionately harmed communities of color. Reverend Marcus Jameson of Atlanta captured the ambivalence that many felt in his Sunday sermon. Jesus has been black to us for centuries, not because of his skin, but because of his suffering. He was a man who understood oppression, walked among the marginalized, and bore the weight of injustice. If Trump's finally catching up, fine, but let's not forget, this is the same man who called African nations shithole countries. Let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. Reverend Jameson's words resonated deeply, reflecting the tension within black as an opportunity to highlight historical and theological perspectives on Jesus' identity. Others dismissed it as an insincere gesture, aimed at exploiting racial issues for political gain rather than fostering enlightenment. Academics and theologians also entered the fray, offering more nuanced insights that transcended the superficial nature of the debate. Historians pointed out that the question of Jesus' ethnicity is far from new, with scholars having long debated his physical appearance. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a professor of religious studies, explained, "The historical Jesus was almost certainly a man of color. As a Jew living in first-century Palestine, he would have had physical characteristics typical of the region: dark skin, dark hair, and Middle Eastern features." Dr. Harper emphasized, however, that Trump's framing of the issue risked trivializing an important conversation. This isn't merely about what Jesus looked like, she argued. It's about how his image has been used to uphold power structures, perpetuate racism, and shape cultural narratives. Reducing this to a political soundbite does a disservice to the deeper truths we need to confront. Other scholars, such as Dr. Jamal Carter, a historian of religion, echoed these concerns, noting that while Trump's comment was clumsy and opportunistic, it could inadvertently spark conversations about decentering Eurocentric views of Christianity. The image of a white Jesus has been deeply ingrained in Western culture, often marginalizing other depictions, he said. While Trump's statement was problematic, it may open up the door for necessary conversations about representation and inclusivity within the church. As the controversy continued to unfold, it became evident that Trump's remarks had struck a cultural nerve, exposing deep divisions within American society. The debate over Jesus' ethnicity had become a proxy for larger issues of race, history, and the intersection of religion and politics. For Trump's supporters, the statement represented his defiance of political correctness and his challenge to conventional narratives. For his critics, it was seen as a cynical tactic to exploit racial and cultural tensions for political gain. In the days that followed, the uproar showed no signs of abating. Social media continued to buzz with debates, memes, and commentary, while religious leaders struggled to address the issue without alienating their congregations. Academics tried to redirect the conversation toward more meaningful historical and theological questions. Meanwhile, Trump remained unapologetic, relishing the controversy he had unleashed. The nation continued to grapple with not just the color of Jesus' skin, but with the enduring power of his legacy in a deeply polarized and divided America. Donald Trump's comment about the possibility of Jesus being black exemplifies his characteristic political strategy: disrupt, dominate, and define. By invoking race and religion, two of the most sensitive and deeply entrenched cultural divides in American society, Trump ignited a firestorm of debate that simultaneously energized his supporters, infuriated his detractors, and positioned him firmly at the center of the national conversation. This calculated disruption is emblematic of his rhetoric, designed not merely to provoke, but to solidify his image as a truth-teller who challenges political correctness and the so-called establishment. From the outset of his political career, Trump has deftly wielded religion as a tool for mobilization, particularly among his substantial base of white evangelical Christians. He has long recognized the influence of faith in American politics, often aligning himself with traditional Christian values and positioning himself as a defender of those values. One striking example is his photo op in front of St. John's Church during the George Floyd protests, where he brandished a Bible in silence, an image that remains one of the most memorable uses of religious imagery in his presidency. For his supporters, such moments reinforce his role as a defender of conservative Christian values, which they perceive to be under siege by a secular, liberal elite. For his critics, these gestures are seen as hollow, political maneuvers devoid of any genuine understanding or faith. Trump's recent comments about Jesus being black ventured into unfamiliar territory, even for him. Religion has always served as a potent undercurrent in American political discourse, but it rarely intersects with such explicit, racialized interpretations of Christ. For much of American history, Jesus has been depicted predominantly in white European terms, not out of historical accuracy, but as a reflection of the cultural and political dominance of whiteness in the Western world. By merely broaching this subject, Trump thrust into public consciousness a conversation that many political figures have long avoided. In doing so, he tapped into a conversation about race, history, and religion, which in turn became a cultural flashpoint. For Trump, this foray into racial and religious themes aligns seamlessly with his broader narrative of disruption. For years, He has positioned himself as a disruptor, one who challenges the status quo and speaks to the frustrations of those who feel marginalized by mainstream institutions. By raising the possibility of a Black Jesus, Trump tapped into a potent mix of cultural grievance and theological curiosity. To his supporters, this comment was yet another instance of his willingness to challenge hidden truths and expose what they perceive as liberal hypocrisies. To his detractors, however, it appeared to be a cynical attempt to inflame racial tensions and further polarize an already divided nation. The question of Jesus' racial identity is far from new, yet it rarely occupies the center of American political discourse. Historically, the portrayal of Jesus as white did not emerge from the realities of his life, but from the cultural and political forces of European colonialism and American racial hierarchies. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that many Christians in the West are familiar with is a construct of Renaissance art and European ideals of beauty, which were then exported globally through colonization and missionary activity. In contrast, early depictions of Jesus in Eastern Christianity, found in Byzantine icons and Ethiopian art, portrayed him with features more reflective of the local populations: dark skin, curly hair, and Semitic or African characteristics. These representations arose from a theological commitment to incarnating Christ in ways that resonated with the cultural realities of specific communities. For Black Americans, the image of a Black Jesus holds profound significance. Emerging from the Black liberation theology movement of the 20th century, the concept portrays Christ as standing in solidarity with the oppressed, a savior who understands suffering and walks alongside the marginalized. Pioneers like James Cone argued that Jesus' identity is inseparable from the plight of the oppressed, making the image of a Black Jesus a vital counter-narrative to the dominant white-centric depictions in Western Christianity. By referencing a Black Jesus, Trump inadvertently amplified this ongoing conversation, bringing it into the mainstream in an unprecedented way. His remark forced many Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about how race shapes religious identity and how the image of Jesus has been used to reinforce or challenge systems of power. For many Black Americans, Trump's statement was met with both acknowledgement and skepticism. On one hand, it shed light on a perspective often marginalized within mainstream Christianity. On the other, his motives were questioned, especially given his history of racially charged rhetoric and policies that many believe have disproportionately harmed communities of color. Was this an earnest engagement with a complex theological and historical issue, or yet another example of Trump exploiting sensitive topics for political advantage? For white evangelicals, the comment introduced a different tension. The image of a white Jesus is deeply ingrained in many evangelical traditions, often serving as a cultural touchstone that reinforces broader narratives of American exceptionalism and the nation's Christian identity. To challenge that image, even indirectly, is to unsettle the theological and cultural foundations upon which many of their beliefs rest. As a result, some evangelical leaders sought to downplay Trump's remark, presenting it as a mere thought experiment rather than a definitive statement. Others distanced themselves, emphasizing that Jesus' spiritual significance transcends racial identity. Speculating about his ethnicity distracts us from the gospel, argued Pastor Greg Thompson of a Texas megachurch, whose remarks were met with polite applause, though murmurs of unease persisted among some parishioners. The broader impact of Trump's comment lies in its capacity to expose and intensify existing divisions over race and religion in America. On one level, it has reignited debates among historians, theologians, and cultural critics about the historical Jesus and the ways in which his image has been constructed and weaponized over time. On another, it has drawn attention to the intricate role religion plays in shaping racial identities and power dynamics. For those who embrace the notion of a Black Jesus, the idea challenges the exclusivity of white-dominated narratives in Western Christianity. It invites believers to view Christ as a universal figure who transcends racial and cultural boundaries. Conversely, others argue that focusing on Jesus' race detracts from his spiritual significance, reducing the Savior of humanity to a symbol of identity politics. This perspective, prevalent among many white conservatives, casts such debates as attempts to undermine traditional Christian values. Ultimately, Trump's remark about Jesus' racial identity is less about theology and more about politics. By invoking a racially and religiously charged topic, he successfully dominated the news cycle and galvanized his base, reinforcing his image as a leader unafraid to tackle controversial issues. Yet, in doing so, he deepened existing divisions, underscoring how race and religion continue to shape the contours of American identity and political discourse. In the end, Trump's comment may be remembered not for its theological merit, but for its capacity to expose the cultural and political tensions that define modern America. Whether interpreted as a moment of disruption, a cynical ploy, or an opportunity for deeper reflection, it highlights the enduring power of religious imagery in shaping national debates, and the skillful, albeit contentious, manner in which Trump wields that power for his own purposes. Trump's statement about a Black Jesus transcends the realm of political sound bites, emerging as a cultural lightning rod. By broaching this subject, he has compelled America to grapple with uncomfortable questions about history, faith, and race. His words have ignited a national conversation that stretches beyond party lines, drawing theologians, activists, and everyday citizens into a profound and contentious discourse. However, the implications remain unresolved. Will this moment serve as a catalyst for greater understanding and meaningful dialogue? Or will it deepen the divisions that already fracture the nation's social and cultural fabric? As America continues to wrestle with its past and envision its future, the idea of a Black Jesus, whether embraced, contested, or dismissed, has emerged as a potent symbol of the complexities and contradictions that define the American experience. In characteristic Trumpian fashion, the former president has once again placed himself at the epicenter of the storm, leaving the nation to contend with the reverberations of his words. Whether viewed as a bold confrontation with historical truths or a calculated provocation designed to exploit cultural tensions, his remark has left an indelible imprint on America's cultural and political landscape. The debate, much like the larger issues it reflects, is far from over. As the nation continues to navigate this moment, the idea of a Black Jesus stands as a reminder of the enduring power of faith, history, and identity to challenge assumptions and shape the narratives that either bind or divide us. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these powerful stories and creating a space for open, heartfelt conversations. Click the notification bell so you're always updated when we post new content. Together, let's explore the unseen, celebrate the miraculous, and inspire one another to live with love, faith, and wonder.